Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for joining in, dropping by today. I'm really excited about this topic, and I'm calling today's talk, gathering, the teachings of Christ according to one who was like him. Meaning, Bruno Groening was very Christ-like in many senses of the word. And Bruno Groening had a few things to say about what Christ actually taught. So this is a very controversial topic. And within in 21st century on planet Earth, there's literally thousands of different denominations, meaning thousands of different interpretations of what Christ actually taught. According to some sources, that number is in the tens or the 20,000s. Other sources say it's much smaller. But regardless, the one thing we can be clear on is that there's not consensus. There's many, many, many opinions. And so I see it as my job today to not give you my opinion about what Christ taught, but to do my best to pass along what Bruno Groening said about Christ. Now, why on earth would we add? So, of course, what Bruno Groening said was words. And until we confirm them in our own experience, that's just one more opinion. Bruno Groening himself said, I'm the only person on this earth who doesn't have any opinions. However, we have to find out for ourselves whether that's true or not. We can't just take Bruno's word for it, and he didn't want us to. So why on earth add one more opinion into the mix? Well, I think there's a very good reason to take Bruno Groening's words, Bruno Groening's understanding of what Jesus taught very seriously. So the question is, what do we give authority to? For example, many Christians give authority to the Bible. Many Protestants give authority to the Bible. People of the Catholic denomination give authority to the Catholic Church's interpretation or understanding of the Bible with other traditions. That's just two examples of it to look at. What does it mean? What do we give authority to? Meaning, what opinions, what ideas do we take seriously? So before finding Bruno Groening, I never really asked myself about this question of authority. Another way to say it is, what do I trust in? The Catholics can't prove that the Catholic Church has the correct understanding of what Christ taught. And so in essence, people are trusting the Catholic Church. Protestants can't prove that the Bible is the infallible word of God, or that the way to understand God or Jesus is through the Bible, but they trust in it. They've given authority to it. So it's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting meditation to ask ourselves, what do I give authority to? Meaning, another way to say that is, what do I trust in that I don't actually know for certain? Human beings like to say they're certain of things. And in fact, Bruno Groening pointed out that what many people call the truth or say I'm utterly convinced of is nothing more than an incorrect opinion that they've just convinced themselves is true. So sometimes it can entail a little deconstruction but if nothing else, a little bit of looking at what do I give authority to? So in finding Bruno Groening, I started to give authority to Bruno Groening's teachings because I experienced miracles in my own body. That's how it started for me. And again, a more gentle way to say, I just started to trust, because not everything Bruno says I'm able to currently prove or know, and yet I've come to trust him as a being and trust his teachings, partially because of the healings I experienced, partially because of the feeling of the healing stream that I experience when I tune in. But finally, what I came to really give authority or really trust in Bruno Groening was how he lived his life, the person he was. Now, of course, in this particular body, I didn't meet him. Who knows? Maybe I was alive when he was alive in another body. I don't remember. I don't have memories of that. But so that can be a little complicated. So yet it also isn't, because we have firsthand accounts and we have his recordings of his voice. We can actually watch videos of Bruno Groening. And so it's in really reflecting on his life, how he lived, the person he was, that I developed quite a bit of trust in him. And I came to the conclusion that he's the most Christ-like being I've ever heard of. Meaning, he's the being most like Jesus Christ that I've ever heard of. It's not my wish to put down other spiritual teachers, but that's just the conclusion I came to. And so maybe that's the one opinion I'll share today, and I'll just name it that it's an opinion, because I'm not a master. And here's where this gets so important to reflect on, because there are many, many spiritual teachers. There are many, many spiritual preachers. Who are we going to trust? What I've come to realize is, and again, this is still just an opinion because I'm not a master yet, I've come to the conclusion that Bruno Groening, whatever spiritual master means, that's what he was and is. And so for me, his word has authority over any book, any other teacher, any other preacher. That's not to say, as anyone who knows me, I'm a constant student of life and of different spiritual things. And because of the person he was, and because of the level of spiritual mastery, and on top of that, the level of humility, that's why I've come to trust Bruno Groening. So I said what we were going to talk about is the teachings of Christ according to one who was like him. And we haven't even talked about that yet, because it's such a convoluted question. There have been killings and wars and fights and arguments and hundreds of thousands of books written on this very topic. So I guess the first point when asking ourselves, what did Jesus Christ teach, is to ask ourselves, well, how am I going to figure out what Jesus Christ taught? How am I even going to approach the topic? Because from my perspective, for about, for, a little over 1900 years, people have been approaching the topic completely wrong. They've been approaching the topic through study, generally through study of texts, and then study of commentaries of people on the text. So if we're comfortable with the idea that Bruno Groening was a Christ-like being, and we're comfortable with the idea that the only person who has authority, I said I wasn't going to say my opinion. Well, I'm not saying my opinions about what Christ taught. For me, the only person who really has the true right to say this is what Christ taught is someone who is like Christ. Everyone else is just a scholar, maybe a scholar with some level of connection to God, but someone who's speaking from book knowledge. And that is the exact opposite of what our dear friend Bruno Groening was. That's why I don't believe I have the right to sit before you or make a video and say to you, this is what Jesus Christ taught. Because I'm just a person still struggling and striving to be like him. I, of course, have the right to share my opinion. Everybody, there's no, but from my perspective, no one has the right to assert this is what Jesus Christ taught unless they're very much like him. So let's sit for a little bit. It's a little bit of intellectual information. So let's really sit and reflect on how we've approached the topic. Let's reflect on who and what has authority for us. And let's reflect on this idea of who we've been taught by. We've been taught by books and by teachers and preachers, some of them very good people, some of them very spiritual people. And from all the teachers and preachers I've met, none of them really being a living, breathing example of what it's like to be Christ-like, so that I could say, wow, that person's really like Christ. So let's spend a little time and reflect on some of these things. Asking ourselves, who and what are we going to trust? We don't have to be rigid. Trusting in Bruno Groening doesn't mean we have to trust that every word out of his mouth was perfect. Trust means trust, have confidence in, until we can find out for ourselves.